Our next speaker is going to be Baruti, who helps lead the Transcendental Meditation community here in Boston and is also a PhD student in Vedic Sciences. We have a professor from Harvard Med School, a professor from Harvard Div School, an engineer from the MIT Media Lab, leaders of local religious communities. All together, those are our speakers. Our demoers come from many different institutions as well. I'm pretty excited to see what comes out of the end. I know the talks are really short, as you probably felt right there. We're going to have time for panel questions afterwards, but we're hoping that this is less of a speaking listening event and more of a speaking with each other event. This is short. There's lots of time after, and we'll all be together in the chapel upstairs. So, Baruti, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, John, for the invitation to actually be here this evening. Show of hands, who meditates in the room? Some form of meditation. Oh, that's awesome. Next level, who does mindfulness? Transcendental meditation. Good. Zazen. Vipassana. Oh, this is wonderful, wonderful. My wife and I, as Adam mentioned, we serve as directors for the Transcendental Meditation program here in the metropolitan Boston area. The foundation, Maharishi Foundation, approached us in January of 2013 about reconstituting TM in the metropolitan area. It has been taught, farther out, Shrewsbury, South Weymouth, Lincoln, Concord, but nothing in really Cambridge proper since 1997. If you're familiar with the Longy School, we used to be located in the building at 33 Garden Street Center. And so they were there, closed in 1997. There hadn't been much activity surrounding the Transcendental Meditation technique at that time, so they closed. They approached us in January to come through. And for me, when I learned TM April 25th, Friday, 2008, in a torrential downpour, I always remember my experience with the technique. And those of you who practice TM know what I'm talking about. It leaves an indelible impression on you, so much so that you begin to think differently about yourself and about the world in which we live. It makes me think of three quotes that come to mind. The first comes from Rumi. Coleman Barks translated this using American Free Verse, and he says, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, languages, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense." When you transcend your thinking mind to experience the quiet aspect, you not only experience that, you bring a bit of it into activity with you. So my dissertation advisor, Dr. Travis, he says, you don't merely experience being, you become being. You bring that into the world around you. Second quote comes from Joseph Ford Newton. He met with Rabindranath Tagore, and out of that meeting, I think it was 1916, December 20th, he wrote an article titled At Tea with Tagore. And he says, "Once by the mercy of God, a truth is born into the world. It can neither be expelled nor can it be defeated. And all who see it are forever conscripts in its service." Thinking about your points, Doctor. When you have the experience of transcending your thinking mind, because heretofore you thought that you are your thoughts. Everything that you've experienced, you create a connection in the brain. With repetition of that experience, those connections strengthen. That then becomes your dominant way of thinking and thus behaving in the world. So much so that you think that your thoughts are you. Yet if you take a look at, if this were a painting, and I ask the question, is the canvas still white? Many people would say no. But the painting couldn't be what it is were it not for the canvas below. I apply turpentine to the painting. Hope that I did God. I apply turpentine, the paint is removed. I turn the painting around, the canvas is still there. Similarly so with the mind, irrespective of what's happening at the top, what's happening between with the thoughts, there lies this quiet, settled aspect, waiting for discovery. That is the real journey. Who's a Trekkie in here? You may remember this one. It's not about mapping stars and studying nebula. It is about charting the unknown possibilities of existence. That is one of my favorite characters within the entire Star Trek universe is Q. Speaking about the issue of a quantum and recognizing that as humans, we have more power than we think. Notice what I said there. We have more power than we think. So a person's socialization is going to dictate how they are in the world. when you choose to step beyond your socialization, to ask more questions, to begin to be challenged by the assumptions you had once before, to embrace a new reality, you become a point of reference of what's possible by simply sitting to delve within. Science is at a new frontier. We have explored the external reality ad infinitum, yet our physicists, psychologists, Vedic scientists, we're asking us now to turn our attention inward, because that's the real journey. The real journey is within. Transcendental meditation, as those of you who practice know and those who don't know will recognize, it is a mental technique that allows you to sit quietly for twice a day, 20 minutes, to allow you to settle your mind, to experience the quiet aspect of your mind. This is done via a mantra. Mantra simply is a Sanskrit word that means a sound whose effects are known. That mantra is chosen for you based on many factors. Once the mantra is chosen, you are instructed in the technique. It allows you to have a settling experience. But not only have the experience, as I said before, you become the experience. Because the reality is, irrespective of who you are, where you come from, what you do in your life, your journey to this moment began 13.8 billion years ago. Think about that for a moment. Social constructs aside, our titles and wealth aside, we're thinking beings. We're feeling beings. Coming to know at a fundamental level that you are that. Tatvamasi is a phrase in Sanskrit that says, and thou art that. You've always been that. You're it's called one of the 4 Mahavakyas. Basically what the Mahavakyas are the final push that the master gives the student when they begin to recognize that something different is happening in their world, that they have to explore. And once they have this disorienting experience, the master says, in this case, Tatvamasi, allows the student to realize that you are that and you've always been that. Once you come to understand that you are that and always have been that, the question then becomes, how do you choose to live your life? Compassion develops. A sincerity for the study of oneself develops. The borders that we erect socially begin to dissolve completely. And the reason for that is because once I know what I am at my core, I know by virtue of having had this experience that you too have the possibility of having the experience. So how can I treat you as an other? How can I treat you as less than or as less or greater than? That becomes, as Rumi says, it's folly. Rumi talks about how we divide ourselves into God clubs in a divinity school. We divide ourselves into God clubs because that's how we're socialized. Yet the moment we begin to ask more questions, we begin to operate from the intersectionality of all these things. Begin to recognize that science has its value. Spirituality has its value. Society has its value. Each one has its value, yet each of them, they're attacking a social phenomenon from a different level. Spirituality seeks to go deeper within. Religion seeks to go just above, but in some cases pointing to. Social constructs often address it only from the surface. But the question becomes, do you explore, in terms of consciousness, only from the surface? Absolutely not. You see that everything is a function of what we think. Everything that we as humans have ever devised began as an idea. Once you recognize that, the question then becomes, what and to what degree do you choose to participate in anything? I'll leave you with one final quote. It comes from another Masonic scholar, Albert Pike. He says, what we do for ourselves alone dies with us, yet what we do for others in the world outlives us and is immortal. Do you choose to be immortal, or do you choose to be immortal? Thank you. I look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Question here.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. This goes to everybody, but Mr. Sisouvong, Professor Sisouvong, primarily I really loved that quote. Thank you, everybody, for coming and speaking to us. But just as a student and somebody that's young and has a long future ahead of me and really wants to feel like I'm taking full advantage of all of the opportunities that I have, and that ends up being that I pack my schedule from dawn to dusk pretty much with events, and I think I'm not really all that mindful and don't really take much time to be at peace or take these moments of silence. And so I wonder, in a busy life where you want to make sure that you're being with people and doing things and growing at every second, how do you also find that time or maybe find that mental space for some sort of meditation, and how do you balance that, like the worldly needs of having a resume that gets you a job eventually, and then also being a human that thinks and lies in that field that you were talking about?
Shift of perspective. Most often people don't think about it. Practicing Transcendental Meditation, you sit quietly twice a day for 20 minutes. That's 40 minutes out of your day. You might as well sit 45 minutes. How many hours are there in a day? You have 23 hours and 15 minutes remaining for the day. I say to people, shift your perspective of, in terms of meditation, less of it being about time management and more about energy management. We've all been in social situations where the energy is very charged. My mom would often say you can walk into a space and the energy is so thick in the room, the tension is so thick you can cut it with a knife. Why not be the center of calm? Why not shift your perspective from it being about time management to say that I don't have enough time to meditate, yet to take care of yourself, i.e. self-care, sitting quietly morning and afternoon to practice the technique, walk into social situations, bring a bit of the calm with you that you experience when you practice the technique. It's a gift you not only give yourself, but the people with whom you come into contact when you walk into socially charged situations. So take time for yourself. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk with you afterward.